Hi, Ian Hogue at 10VX Accuracy, here to introduce a new product for 2024. It is a tool for changing the springs on a Bernard P or a Bernard S target rifle action. You can buy other tools for, say, the Remington 700 or the Winchester Model 70. They're commonly available at Brownells or Sinclair's, and this is at a comparable cost. So, how do you know if you're going to need to change a spring? Well, the worst case scenario is you're experiencing hang fires or misfires. And that could be one of two things. It could be your firing pin protrusion, or it could be your spring has just gotten too weak. Now, I change my springs, in all honesty, about every 2 years. And I could probably get a little more time out of them if I did the proper thing every year, and that is at the end of the season, you take your rifle and your bolt, loosen this off, not all the way, just enough so that you can move the cocking mechanism off that point. There. So now I've taken as much pressure that is continued to take off the spring as possible, and the cat comes back. So the pressure is off the spring as much as possible without disassembling the entire pin, and that's how you'd leave it for the off season. And in Canada we have extremely cold, extremely long winters, and you would think it would be worth our while to do this, but in all honesty I just don't remember to do it. And so I feel I have to replace the springs on a fairly regular basis. Now, what would the consequence be of not changing the spring other than the misfires and the hang fires? Well, where is that misfire and that hang fire going to occur? And I once had it happen in Brisbane, Australia, where I had collectively spent about $10,000 to be part of the Canadian Palma team, and I started getting micro hang fires. So at extreme long range, like 900,000 yards, those micro hang fires, especially in the wind that we were experiencing in Brisbane in 2011, created low downwind shots. And I was shooting well enough at the time that I knew I hadn't put them there. Then I got an actual, definitely identifiable hang fire, and I knew I had a problem. So, changing your springs can save you a lot of disappointment, and in that case, where you spend a lot of money. So, how do you do it? Well, we've already got the bolt released here, so we just take the bolt cap off. You have to be careful here of the ball bearing that sits right in this device here. So, you would just take this, remove it like that. Remove this item, the sleeve, and this ball bearing here. I've lost a couple of these, so I'm speaking from experience. Oddly enough, in this rifle, that is a 1/4 inch ball bearing, and everything else in the rifle is metric. So, left with the bolt. What you could do at this point in time is measure your firing pin protrusion. So you just reassemble that, hold it up with your finger there, use a caliper, measure the distance to the face, and then the distance to the top tip of the pin, and subtract those two numbers. In my case, it's 52 thousandths of an inch, which is about in spec 50 to 55. So, the other thing you need to do is you need to measure and record the settings on the bolt. Now, you'll be quite wildly different if you get it wrong, because you'd have to have one full rotation of this piece back here. So, we measure this distance. In this case, I'm using a 6-inch caliper, so I would measure the distance straight from the back to the face that regulates the depth of the protrusion. It doesn't really regulate it, it's fixed. But that distance, record that so that you can reassemble your firing pin the same way it came out. Okay, you have your firing pin there, It has a set screw back here. It'd be a metric set screw. So make sure you have some metric hex keys. And this has been Loctited in place. So you're going to need some heat to remove that, well, not to remove, to loosen that set screw. We don't want to remove it because, you might lose it, so you'll remove it later, but for now, just loosen it back. So we need to grapple this and say a pair of pliers. It has a couple flat spots right there that you can grab. But I'm going to heat it up first. So anyways, we'll just heat it up. Use a butane torch, a little small butane torch or a propane torch. I once used the kitchen gas top because these are all empty. And then you heat this up like so. Loctite will be affected by temperature. It turns like epoxy. It turns to basically chalk once it gets hot enough. You're not trying to heat this up that cherry red or anything. You just want to loosen the bond on the Loctite. And it's just trial and error, so try that. Oh, should have had the correct metric screw ready. Get on those flats, and that loosens back nicely. And you can see some remaining Loctite coming out around the screw. So I'll just loosen that back about that far. That should be enough. Now, I'm ready to put it into my device here. Might want to let this cool off a little bit. Back this off. There are two metal washers here. This plastic will, the printing material melts at about 190 Celsius to it's 374 Fahrenheit, I believe. So you have to be pretty hot to melt it. So there we have the spring compressing. You can see it right there. And once you've got it backed off a bit, then you can take this provided tool, insert, and now you might again need to use the pliers to keep the pin stationary. That Loctite is affecting it as well. So use a pair of pliers there to keep the pin stationary and rotate. Could have this in a vise, I suppose, to keep it from flipping like that, but there, our caulking piece is completely off. Add that to our bag of parts. I'm often working in a shop, it's got a lot of things on the floor, and I have lost my share of parts. So there we have our spring and compressed mode. And this is where you get into difficulty if you're doing this with a jury rig device down in your bench vise, is I have had these things sort of fly apart and then I'm looking for parts around the shop. So in this case, I'm just going to release the pressure with the lead screw. There's that washer. And I'm going to put it into the bag. Now when you're removing parts, just make sure you don't jam the pin in here. There's more than enough room, but if you don't let it expand far enough, then you might, if you force it, you're going to damage the pin possibly. So there is our spring, easy to remove. Now on the Bernard, if you can see closely, this is actually threaded into the front, so I assume that this part is replaceable. Cat came back. And at this point, you would check the spring length if you're just doing sort of a maintenance thing. You want to see if do you have a compression problem. So you would measure the length, record that. In this case, I'm seeing 4.795. And if I check that against a new spring, I am seeing quite a bit of difference. 4.974. So just double check my measurements. If you're using a Bernard P, then you probably, if you had never done this before, you want to make sure that you are using, well, in my case, I want to make sure I'm using a heavy spring rather than the spring that comes with it from the factory, especially if you're having any kind of ignition issues. So a new spring is measuring at 4.974 thousandths of an inch. And the spring that I removed from the rifle measured 4.805. So that is a difference of 170 thousandths of an inch. Now, whether that is enough, going to make that much of a difference, that's a question I can't answer. But like I say, I just make a habit of replacing these every couple of years in each rifle. They're about $50. I've provided the links to where you can get them down below in the description. In Canada, you get them from Hirsch Precision, in Nova Scotia, and then in United States, you can get them from John Wooden Gunworks. Now, the spring that I removed from that rifle had a difference of 170 thousandths from a new spring. It's up to you whether that's enough difference. But some Bernards have different springs, even if they have been upgraded to a heavy spring. I have two Bernard Ps, and I have upgraded them over the years to heavy springs. Now, I have a newer one that I just upgraded. That's the one I was disassembling. I took apart the older one after completing the video and discovered that the heavy spring that I had in that rifle was almost 3/4 of an inch different in length. 5 coils less. That's going to make a significant difference in striker fall. And they were both purchased from Bernard dealers. And they were made, I believe, by the Bernard factory. So they have changed their standard. And the newer spring came from John Wooden. I believe it was just 2 years ago. I picked up a supply. So they have 5 more coils in them. They're both using the same wire diameter of 70 thousandths of an inch. So that's going to make quite a bit of difference in that older rifle, which I hadn't shot for a while. And I just started reshooting it. It still shot accurately with the old spring, or seemed to, but it's going to be a little bit more snappy with the new spring. So that's an example of what kind of a difference you can find when you start looking at these things. So, reassembly is pretty much the same as the assembly. In this case, we need to get our parts out here. Now, before you do this, you're going to want to remove that set screw. Now, your set screw there, you're going to want to clean that with your favorite solvent. I use medical grade alcohol. Cat's trying to help. Third locking compounds. Red is generally kind of super strong. Might want to avoid that one. It will release with heat though. Blue is kind of a go-to. So I'm going to drop on there and a drop in the back here. Get started. Now, the only sort of tricky part, you get your washer in here. It doesn't matter which way it goes. Okay. Now get that all centered. Recompress. You'll start to see the thread coming through there. The cat's trying to help again. Giving up and trying to get her out of the shot. She just wants to be a YouTube star. Might require a little bit of centering here a bit. There it goes. Use the provided tool here. And now here's where you'll need to use your calipers to check your length. Now my recorded length was 5 inches and 30 thou. So I can just put that here and I can see that I've got quite a bit of distance to go here, but that I've got this locked on there, so it'll give me a reference point. So I just keep turning this in. This is developing emitter pressure, so I have to put some gentle pressure there. Keep that from spinning. And just double check. Oh, still got quite a bit. Distance has nothing to do with the spring. There, it looks like I'm just at 5 inches, 30 thousandths. Now that set screw's got to go in. You can do this in a vise if you wish. So it'll make contact with the end of the firing pin. And that's it. New, tight, heavy spring installed on a Bernard P action. As I said, it works equally well with the Bernard S action, which is a slightly smaller diameter, but everything has been calculated to fit. This is part of a startup venture, and we have not set up a web-based business yet, platform. So this product sells. I'm selling this for $100 Canadian at the moment. That's about $75 US. Which is comparable to such devices being sold for other rifles by Sinclair and Brownells. To my knowledge, this is the only one that's for the Bernard P or the Bernard S. If you are interested, contact me at the email in the video description. If you have a particular action that you would like a similar tool for, I may be able to help you. I can redesign it and then I could offer it on my site. Just contact me at the same address. Be sure to like this video and check out other 10VXA's products, such as the Shot Graph. Stay tuned for future product videos.